Hi everyone, Velvet here, and I have some stories for you today. But before we get started, can you please do me a huge favor and like, comment, and subscribe? It'll really help the channel out, and it'll get you more videos like this every day. Let's get started. And our first one comes from Sienna Cinnabar. Am I the beehole for refusing my sister-in-law in her request to baptize her child during our wedding? I dated my fiance for 5 years before we tied the knot. I have a great relationship with his parents and siblings, except one of his sisters, the golden child of the family. She's annoying, but whatever, it's fine. I've been able to keep out of her way for the most part, as her family lives out of state. So, my boyfriend and I got engaged, and everything is going great, planning with both sides of the family. Until sister-in-law, at the last minute, requests that she and her family baptize their daughter during our ceremony. She'd even call our priest, and he agreed to combine the ceremonies. What? I said no for several reasons, none of which were good enough, and I was apparently being unreasonable and selfish. My reasons. We are Catholic, and weddings are usually an hour. Taking on a baptism would either make the ceremony longer or take time away from our ceremony. Our wedding was an evening affair, and the reception was only going to be 2 hours. So even if it lasted 30 minutes, the baptism and their photos afterwards, that would cut our reception down to an hour and a half. Her wedding/reception was an all-day affair. The baby would be in the church, in the wedding photos, and at the reception, so seriously, who would focus on another wedding couple when their first grandchild is nearby? Her reasoning. All the family would already be gathered for our wedding, and it'd be a good time for them, her family, to have it. And shouldn't I be more accommodating to a first-time mother? Oh, I hate that crap. Why do people think they're the first person in the world to have a child and they should be special? Ugh, sorry, back to the story. They'd only invite about 4 or 6 additional people to our wedding, strangers to us, and it'd be easier on them because we'd already have the venue and the food for their short guest list, which we'd be paying for. It's the first grandchild and important to her family. I guess I wasn't part of it and yet not included in this sentiment. My fiance didn't have a strong preference either way, but supported how I felt on the matter. I stuck to my guns and said no, but we offered a compromise. We said we'd delay our honeymoon trip, and they could have the baptism the next Sunday morning during Mass. I thought it was a great compromise, but sister-in-law was not thrilled. So that's what we ended up doing, but she still brought her baby girl in a full white satin lace to the wedding and was in front and center in all of the photos. And they brought their extra 4 to 6 friends to our reception without asking first. We never made a fuss about it. My issue is this. I still get crap from this sister-in-law, and it's been a couple years since the wedding. Snippy remarks made when it's only the two of us around, passive-aggressive comments in front of others, bridezilla labels tossed my way, a cold shoulder when I try to talk to her at holidays, etc., etc. Like seriously, it was years ago, and she's basically got what she wanted, so why am I still being treated like the beehole? Am I the beehole? Edit. To address the repeated questions. When this first came up, I said no. My husband took over handling this completely from there. He worked with his mom and sister. I didn't have to deal with anything besides initially saying no. Husband was the point of contact after that. Granted, we didn't know she'd still show up with her guests to the reception or know what her daughter was dressed in, but at that point we were having a good time at our reception, and we were focused on ourselves. I only figured out that she invited her friends when I saw the photos later. I don't know if she ever offered to pay because I wasn't in the conversation at this point. It happened right before our wedding, and Hubs and mother-in-law didn't want me to stress out. It was a short evening reception with a buffet. We had about 200 people in total. Her passive-aggressive comments in the following years were very subtle. If she said something rude, or if my husband called her out on it, which he did, she'd simply claim we misunderstood her. Okay, so she's gaslighting you. Cool. The rude comments or snubs she gave me directly in private, she'd also claim I misunderstood her. Again with the lighting, okay. Or she was blowing an incident or comment out of proportion. My husband has stood up for me, but our interaction with her are brief and only once or twice a year, so it's not like I'm dedicating a lot of time to trying to have a great relationship with her. She's a narcissist, and I refuse to give her any drama to feed her addiction. It just struck me as odd that she hung on to this incident for so long, and I began to question if I might have inadvertently been the A since this post. Hi OP, you are not the beehole, and I've said this before on wedding stories. It is your day. You get to do what you want to do on your day. It's not, and I love how she's trying to gaslight you into saying you're a bridezilla and all that. You are not a bridezilla. You should not have to have someone baptizing their child in your wedding. That's insane. I have never heard of someone wanting to do this before, because most people know that's not something you ask to do. It's like you said, she's a narcissist and she can't stand having not having all the focus and attention on her, and that was her way to do it, to steal your day from you like that. She got off on that. Narcissists are really, really evil, scummy people from what I've had to deal with in my life and family. And like I was saying when I was reading the story, she's gaslighting you, showing that, yeah, she's an evil, narcissistic person. OP, I was gonna tell you should have made sure to have them kicked out of your wedding, but it sounds like she snuck those people in. And who does that to a wedding? You know, when it comes to the food in the wedding, people have the food for, just enough food for the people showing up, the 200 guests you had. Not 200 and what, 4, 206, whatever, how many people she brought. So yeah, people know that it's uncouth to do something like that, and she still did it. Because it's about her. She wants to make everything about her, and she succeeded, sadly. I wish you guys had caught her a lot sooner, like at the door, and booted her, because I personally wouldn't tolerate that type of nonsense from people. Uh, yeah, OP, you're doing what I would suggest you do. Distance yourself and go no contact. Well, you say you're distancing yourself. I wouldn't just ignore her. She wants to pass a little snide remarks. Ignore her. There's no benefit to having her in your life. It's not like she's a good person. You're not gonna miss out on anything not having her around you. So OP, you are not the beehole, and that evil sister-in-law is the beehole. OP, I hope you guys have a lovely marriage, and you shouldn't have to deal with this type of person. And our next one comes from Western Technician 44. Am I the beehole for telling my mother she hasn't been my mom since I was 5, and I don't owe her anything? When I, a 24-year-old female, was 5, my mother had her second child, my sister. We have different dads, neither was involved when we were kids. My sister was born prematurely, and this is when my mother went from being my mom to being almost a stranger to me. She spent all her time at the hospital with my sister, and I was passed around from friends to family and even to strangers my mother and I did not know, because an aunt would hand me over to someone in her husband's family, or a family friend would pass me on to their friend. Oh, that's scary. My sister was in the hospital for months and had many complications from being born so early, so was one of the youngest premature preemies in the hospital history. When she started to get strong enough to go home, she had complications due to her stomach and were found and required more time and more treatments. My mother was in and out of the hospital with her for the next couple of years as they performed surgeries and gave treatments when she would get sick. At that point, even when my mother was home with my sister, she would keep me somewhere else. Normally, the times I was home with her, I was left alone, and her focus was on my sister. Then, when my sister was 2, she was diagnosed with leukemia, and that resulted in more treatments, more hospital visits, and just never seeing them. By the time I was 10, my mother was okay with leaving me home while they were at the hospital, so I was alone. It was around the time that my teacher started to suggest that I might have dyslexia, and the school reached out to my mother, but she was too focused on my sister to do anything for me. Nothing changed after my sister became cancer-free, and she was less sick and needed less hospitals. My mother was so devoted to her and that she didn't pay any attention to me, and both were strangers to me. I started staying with my girlfriend's family as a teenager, and my mother didn't care. I would only go back to her house when I needed to pick up more of my clothes or stuff. And when I turned 18, I moved out and officially got my dyslexia diagnosis. Now, several years later on, I don't really have anything to do with my mom or my sister. I don't blame my sister for any of this. It's just no bond could form from when we were younger, and she's a stranger to me. My mother has started to have some health problems and turned to me for help. She told me I should be around more and doing stuff to help her because she's my mom. She also said my sister deserves a relationship with me and accused me of punishing my sister for exiting. I told her that it wasn't true, but we're strangers and that was because of her, my mother. I told her she hadn't been my mom since I was 5, and she had no right to ask me to care for her when she hasn't cared for me for almost 20 years. She called me selfish and spoiled child who never grew up. Am I the beehole? Hello, OP. You are not the beehole. And yeah, I get where you're coming from. And you know why I say you're not the beehole? Because you're not harboring any ill will towards them. But I get what you're saying. You didn't spend any time with them to develop a bond with either of them. So yeah, they're strangers to you, and like most of us are strangers, we can feel empathy towards people going through things. But if you don't know them personally, you don't. It's different. I don't know how to explain. You don't care. It's not like you don't care for them. It's just you care for a stranger less. You know what I mean? And it's nice to hear that you don't harbor any will towards your sister, because yeah, it's not her fault she got cancer, but it is your mother's fault that she didn't try to make time for you. You know what I mean? Like, she's your parent. What? She's letting you, passing you around to weird people. And okay, maybe family and close friends, but then those close friends are passing you on to people who are their friends who I'm pretty sure your mom doesn't know. Like, yeah, she was a bad parent. And I kind of feel for her because your child has cancer, but you still need to be a parent. You have two kids, you have multiple children. And I agree with you. You shouldn't have to come care for her. She has her other child, and like you said, that's a stranger. That's like a stranger calling me up out of the blue who I do not know, going, "Hey, can you come care for me? I'm in my, I'm in hospice. Please come take care of me." It's like, I don't know you. I'll do that for the people I know and love, but I don't know you. So, P, I completely get where you're coming from, and no, you are not the beehole. And if I were you, I probably wouldn't bother going there, because like I said, that's a stranger to you, OP. A stranger who was supposed to love you. I think it's worse than a stranger, because I think most strangers would try to take care of a child and not pass them on to people they barely know to take care of them. You know? I'm not sure. But yeah, OP, not the beehole. Don't go take care of that woman. Like you said, strangers. Plus, she has another child who could probably do that for her. Ooh, I looked down in the comments and I didn't even think about this. Appropriate Bug 680 says, not the beehole. I think the mom is reaching out for multiple reasons. She's sick, doesn't want to burden her miracle child, OP's sister. I didn't even think about that. I thought she would immediately go to the golden child and have him take care of her because, how much she watched over her. But back to it. To have her take care of her. Also probably wants OP to reassure that if anything happens to her, they'll step in and take care of the sister. That's the vibes I'm getting, and that's messed up. I agree with you, Bug. That's probably it, and yeah, that is messed up. And our final one comes from Wide Raspberry 1280. Am I the beehole for not allowing my mother-in-law to come over to my house unannounced and for no longer accepting anything she buys us? I've been with my husband for 3.5 years and married for just over 1 year. This past November, we had our first child. My husband is an only child and his father was never in the picture. Him and his mom have never really been close. Now, for a little backstory, we are both at odds with my mother-in-law, and it's all started less than 24 hours after having my son. My husband and I told both my mother-in-law and my mother that we did not want our son's birth turned into a photo op. People taking pictures of me has always made me uncomfortable. My son had some complications immediately after he was born and was rushed to the NICU. I wasn't able to see him for roughly 9 hours. Once I was allowed to go into the NICU, my husband went with me, as this was our first time, and I was officially meeting my newborn son. Next thing I know, I look up and see my mother-in-law using this opportunity as a photo op. I was fuming. These were not the first pictures I wanted of my son or of my husband and I with our son. The next morning, my mother-in-law decided she wanted to come back and see our son, who is now safe and in our room. I'm running on maybe 2 hours of sleep, but I still said it was okay for her to come. Once she was there, I really didn't interact with her. I was just trying to rest. After she left, I ended up calling my husband, and this is when he decided to call her out on the photo op, and how she completely violated a boundary that we clearly set. Her response floored me. She began yelling at my husband, saying that I hated her, and that I always didn't like her, and I never have, that I'm still hateful towards her. She said her reasoning for taking the pictures was because she thought we would want to remember that moment, and to her it wasn't a big deal, and she didn't see the point of getting upset. Once this all happened, I decided I needed to distance myself from her and focus on my new family. My husband agreed with doing this as well. Fast forward to about a week and a half ago. My husband and son have been sick for over a week. I was out doing errands and getting groceries. Mother-in-law asked me multiple times if I wanted anything from Sam's Club. I would constantly tell her no, but thank you. She was doing the same to my husband, and he would also respond, no, we're good, but thanks. I returned home and my son was screaming. He hadn't slept all day. We all decided to try a nap. My husband finally falls asleep, and I finally get my son to fall asleep. About 10 minutes later, there's a knock on my door. My dog goes flying and barking her head off, waking up my son, and I answer the door and say, "Why are you here?" She says, "I wanted to bring you a rotisserie chicken, a trash can, and laundry detergent." I told her we already said we didn't need anything, and not to show up at our house unannounced, and then the next time she tries to give us random crap, I will immediately return it to her, so we don't want anything from her. She got angry and said she will never come over and speak to us again, and slammed the door. Am I the beehole? Hi, OP. You are not the beehole. She is the beehole. You set a boundary and she immediately went over that boundary when you didn't want someone to film or take pictures of your child in that state or situation. That was already strike one. And then her constantly asking if you guys need anything. Now, with normal people, that'd be a very nice thing because, a family who just had their first child, you want to be there and help them. But in her case, I believe from what I've seen at the end of your story, that she's doing that just to find a way in and, to get her way over. To do what? Bug you guys? I don't know, because it doesn't sound like she's trying to be mean to your baby or anything like that. She sounds like she's just overbearing. But yeah, that would tick me off too. Someone, disrespecting you like that. Oh, and just kind of random. Don't eat that stuff, the rotisserie chicken, or if you have like those places that serve you fried chicken at the store, don't do that. They don't wash their chicken. One of my family members used to work at a store like that. It is nasty. Make that food yourself. Also, that ending part where she says she'll never come over again or speak to you guys again. I don't get why she's using that as something against you. She's giving you exactly what you want. It's the same kind of energy as having a terrible customer that, cusses out the employees and treats them like garbage and they shout, "Oh, I'll never shop here again." It's like, good. That's what we want. We don't want you in here again. It's just kind of a funny little comparison. But yeah, OP. Yeah, distance yourself from her. Nobody likes an overbearing person like that. But congratulations on having your first child. I'm glad he's healthy and you're able to take him home and have fun raising that baby. I, mm, I don't have a kid, but if I ever had a kid, I would love to show him all the cool stuff I grew up with. Just, a little random thing at the end. But yeah, OP, not the be-all. Thank you so much for staying with me to the end of this video. Can you please do what I said in the beginning and like, comment, and subscribe? It will really help the channel out, and it'll get you more videos like this every day. Velvet out.